global demand for mobility expected to double by 2030. According to the World Bank, we will see an inexorable increase in car traffic in cities, resulting in more noise, more pollution, and more congestion. So, what can we do about it? What are the solutions that are on the table? Is there finally a real alternative to private cars in our city centres? To discuss one of the greatest challenges facing cities today, I'm pleased to have with me some exciting experts around this table. So, Annelise Avril, Group Senior Executive Vice President at Keolis. We also have Aurélien Cottet, International Sales Director at Instant Systems and Mass Expert. Suzanne Hoadley, who is the Senior Manager, Traffic Efficiency Coordinator, Polis. And last but not least, Ronan Perrier, Head of Mobility for Corporates, Arval BNP Paribas Group. Well, welcome to all of you. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so let's get into the heart of the matter before we listen to our experts, and we will get back to you in a couple of seconds. So we will speak to them on the promises of a new form of mobility. But before that, let's find out what it's all about in our next video. Take a look.
We are living a new revolution, just like others we have already experienced. Before this we had, and now we have this. This has been replaced by this. What if moving around cities was as easy as route planning? A choice transport mode, a choice of route based on user criteria. Single payment, one transport ticket. Welcome to a new form of mobility, mobility as a service. End-to-end personalized mobility experience. Pilot programs are springing up all over Europe: Dijon, Paris, Barcelona, Brussels, London. A solution for cities to reduce congestion, pollution, and noise. So why are all-inclusive mobility services so slow to scale up? It's not that simple. Many challenges remain, each with its own set of possible answers and strategic choices. Shared values between stakeholders, data access and sharing, mobility model viability. One thing is certain. The urban revolution of mobility as a service requires unprecedented cooperation between everyone involved, reconciling general and private interest. So, how do we make it a reality?
Is mobility as a service a viable alternative to private cars in the city, or simply a complementary mobility solution? This is one of the questions that I'm going to ask my guests who are around the table today. So we just discovered, exactly what lies behind mobility as a service, or MaaS, which is not a very sexy word, by the way. But anyway, so what does MaaS mean for each of you, and for personally and on the company front? Your feedback very quickly, Suzanne.
Yeah. So likewise, thank you for inviting me here today, representing Polis. So I guess, I think it's a really good question to ask, what does MaaS mean to us personally in our organisations? Because over the years, as long as I've been working on MaaS, I think each person I've spoken to has a different interpretation of what MaaS is. And I've been in situations where we've been having conversations at cross purposes, because I could be talking to someone about MaaS, but they have a different definition of MaaS to me. So for me personally, but I think more broadly for the organisation I represent, it's more this digital integration of mobility services and providing this single interface to users, so via a smartphone app, for instance, so that they can access a set of tailored services. So I think that's really what MaaS is to me. It's got very strong digital connotations, but clearly those mobility services have to be there on the ground. Mm-hmm. And if they're not there, then there is no MaaS.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get there. So, Annelise, what's your definition? Do you have a different one?
I'm pretty much aligned as an operator at Keolis. We share the view that actually it's a combination of two elements. Mm-hmm. One of them being the availability and the existence of, as you said, Suzanne, a broad range of mobility services, and they have to be fully integrated to provide a seamless customer journey on the ground. And the second element is the digital interface and the digital platform, which provides one single point of access to these services. And this access is the ability to plan your trip, to buy your ticket online, and so on and so forth. But you need the two. So, now we are in a hybrid world where, you combine the physical and the digital components when we're having meetings or whatever. I think it's the same for mobility as a service. You need to have the real physical services on the ground, properly coordinated and integrated, and a very seamless digital interface to make a difference.
Fantastic. And Ronan, what's your stance?
Yeah, well, so I think, first of all, mass cannot be a tool looking for a problem, but it has to answer to real problem, right? It has to solve something, otherwise it does not make any sense. And at Arval, we are focusing on serving the corporates, the companies, and mass is, let's say, a natural evolution of our historical activity, providing cars to companies. So the mobility of companies used to rely heavily on cars, but now the context is changing, the challenges are rising, new challenges are rising for companies, and also new options for moving around are coming up. So companies need to make their way through that. So 70% of those companies have already implemented alternative mobility modes, such as car sharing, bike lease, or mobility budget. So mass is actually the orchestrator of those new options, and it is a way for them to manage new mobility policy and nudge their employee towards more sustainable mobility.
Fantastic. So we're going to speak about concretely what's happening. So MAS, correct me if I'm wrong, aims to promote sustainable and ecological urban mobility by reducing the number of personal cars. Is this something like, utopian? The projects that you're working on, I'm sure you're working on many of them. Are those really conclusive? Probably this question for maybe Annelise first. What do you think?
Well, first, I think it has to be simple. Because, we've been already talking about different views and that there's no one silver bullet. So it has to be simple on the ground, as I said, with a broad range of services which have to be really well integrated and coordinated. Because we need people to be able to switch to one mode to another in a very seamless, easy manner. And in Dijon, because you're after also some practical example, and I know that in this very session, we're going to hear actually some representative from Dijon. So in Dijon, we have this very nice mass platform, which includes a voice assistant for people who don't feel super comfortable with navigating in the app. And so they can interact by talking to the app. And the app actually is going to guide them or to give them some instructions, either to plan their trips or to buy their tickets or and so on and so forth. So I think that it's a very good example of how
really
to make things simple. And it's actually quite well embraced by the people. We have 125,000 regular users. And every day we have roughly like 13,000 usage requests on the app. So it's quite widely embraced. And I think, yes, it's a testimony of the simplicity, which is a key success factor for these projects, I think.
So we need to get more simplicity to get there. And you were saying the solutions need to be there and they need to be more simple. Aurélien, what's your take?
So I had a chance in my career to have seen a lot of mass pilot around the world, but I'm going to talk about the one we were working currently at Instant System, that is Move Brussels, that is the mobility apps of the city of Brussels, the capital of Europe. And it's a pilot, and it's good that they wanted to have a pilot before thinking about products, because they wanted to co-create with some ambassadors. So they selected first 1,000 people, different backgrounds, different ages, sociology, and etc., to get feedback, to understand that if the application that we were developing was the right interface, the right needs, to improve it before releasing to the large public. I mean, when I started in the mass more than 4 years ago, the idea was, the car is the enemy and the mass is
the solution, the holy grail.
Exactly, on the knight, who with the sword and say, I'm going to save.
It's not as simple.
It's not that simple. I think first the mass needs to be thought for who will use it. And then not only the young one, because we were talking about digitally savvy. Not everyone is...
Absolutely.
So that's very important. So at Brussels, we saw what Annelise just said, is we need something very simple, not too many clicks, being able to also to help the people. So the customer service is very important. The integration in a seamless way is also very important, and that's where we probably discuss that a little bit later, is between the public and the private, how aggregate everyone on the same platform. That's a challenge too. But we're going to overcome it, and it's just going to be, take some time. On the test step by step. Why? It's because what we saw in many cities, the digitalization of the service are not there yet. The information is there, but not accessible. It's there, but it's not real time. So we still need to work on the digitalization on all the services before being able to integrate them seamlessly. So we are still in a transition phase, I think.
Right. Does that resonate, Ronan? I mean, from the Arval perspective, what are you seeing in your business?
Yeah, well, actually, I'd like to suggest a different angle to that, and which is, I think we should not oppose personal car and mass, because they actually work together, right? So
It's some kind of misconception.
Yeah, probably.
To oppose it in the minds of people.
I often hear mass should make the personal car disappear. I think that's not the right angle to it. We live in an ecosystem.
You've watched too much futuristic movies.
Yeah, probably you're right. Netflix is not helping me.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, the personal car is one link of the whole chain, as well as public transport and bike, for example. And one promise of the mass is to give you the best combination of modes depending on your own situation. And probably the car is one of those elements. And I personally think that car is probably one of the greatest invention of the century, right? Giving freedom, sometimes allowing to get a job. Sometimes you are not allowed to get a job without a car. And I read an article this morning comparing the car to the cigarette. It's the new public enemy number one.
Wow.
So, okay, I think it's a bit hard, but... It's
extreme.
It's kind of real. That's what we see now. That's what we hear, and that's what we read in the newspaper. But sometimes there are some cases where the car can be positively substituted by alternative, and mass will help to find those cases and will give a convenient access to the alternative. But there are many cases where car is simply the best option to get from A to B, or maybe in combination with other modes, you take your car to the nearest train station or to the nearest tram, and then you switch to another mode. So, yes, mass will help to reduce the number of personal cars, but I don't think we want to see the personal car disappear from the mobility landscape.
Susan, you want to add something?
I would like to respond to that. Yeah, no. I mean, I do agree with Ronan that the car is a part of the mobility mix, even the personal car. I represent city and regional authorities, and I think we all know that their goal is to reduce car usage in the city. I mean, that's clear. That's part of the sustainable mobility goals. But it's, as Ronan said, it should be perhaps not the first mode of choice. I mean, this is what city authorities are saying. Your first mode of choice should be active modes, walking, cycling, and then potentially public transport, and then car sharing or taxis. And if, none of those options are suitable, then, then you take the personal car. But I would like to raise another point as well that's sort of related to this question. And that is that I think we're overestimating the ability of mass to reduce the personal car. I mean, to get drivers out of their car and using other modes. And, there's a whole body of research around travel behaviour. And there's been a lot of research into, what it's going to take to get drivers out of their car. And it's more than, even seamless mobility services at the physical and the digital level. It will take more than that. So I don't think we should sort of overestimate the role of mass, but certainly that is the direction that we should be going in.
All right. So are there any cities where you're seeing reduction of cars for some reason? Do you have any examples there?
Yeah. Yes, of course. There are a lot of cities that are seeing maybe not a reduction in cars, but at least an increase in modal share of cycling and walking and public transport, obviously pre-pandemic. And that's, at the moment, perhaps not due to mass. I think one of the big contributors is really taking space away from car drivers and giving it to these other modes of transport. So we know in a lot of cities, especially in the city centre, we are pedestrianising certain zones, or we are taking road space away, putting in bike lanes, we're giving the space to pedestrians, widening the footwalk, we're putting in bus-only lanes. And these are measures that have really proven to work. I have friends who live in Brussels. They used to have 2 cars. They live in the city centre. Now they have 1 car that they take out once a month because they say, driving around in Brussels is a nightmare. There is so much congestion. And then you spend half an hour looking for a parking space. So it's
probably compared to a couple of years back, they have more options also today.
Yes. I think public transport has improved. There are more options. Yeah, there are more sharing schemes, car sharing, bike sharing, and the like. So yeah, there are definitely more options. Yeah.
Well, I hear you all. That's the way forward. But obviously, what I'm also hearing is that every place is different, every city is different, and you can't answer it the same way. So maybe, Aurélien, just a quick word on that. So different contexts mean different solutions.
It means, yes, different solution. At least the technical solution could come from the same backhand or front hand. It's the integration of all the actors can be different. Also, it's very important what Suzanne was saying, regulation on mobility policy is very important. That means if we want people to embrace the mass, it needs to be encouraged. We know
this is not the case, you mean?
With the pilots, not necessarily all the pilots. A lot of pilots has been, launched on thinking like, okay, we're going to aggregate everything and it's going to work. No, we need a lot of communication also, because the first reflex of a car driver is to open Waze or Google Maps. If you want them to see that there are alternatives, or at least where they can park their car on shift the modes at the parking, to reduce the part of the car, they need to be aware of this kind of solution. So I think if we talk just the solution, technology is just secondary. It's very important. But the first thing is to make sure that everyone is around the table, private and public, with the same rules, and to know the rules that can apply according to the local context. There is a difference between people who are living 1 kilometer from a train station versus when you are in a rural environment where the first train station or bus station is 50 minutes away by foot. So I don't believe in one solution that fits everything. It's going to be very local.
And this is what you were saying, Ronan, earlier. So not one holy grail. It's about using different kind of solutions depending on where we stand.
I don't think one size can fit all the situation. I actually believe quite the opposite. There's probably a need for a specialized mass that can answer well different use cases. And mass is not only about software, actually. We were discussing that before coming here, but it's also about providing the right solution at the right place and at the right time. That's what you were saying. And if we want a wide adoption of the service, it has to be available when you need it and where you need it, and the software layer is just a facilitator to ease the access to that. But you don't need the same services in a very dense city like Paris or in Dijon, for example. You cannot apply the same recipe and then translate it into another city. So it's really a case by case approach, I would say.
All right. Susan, you want to add something there, maybe?
I agree with a lot of what's been said already. Maybe just to pick up on 2 points, we need to understand what problem mass is trying to solve. And I think we all agree that in most city centres, there's a good transport offering already. Do we need a mass platform on top of that, a digital solution? I'm not so sure. I think if we're going to make investments, we're going to go to the effort of integrating all sorts of different modes, we need to understand what problem we're solving. And I think commuting is definitely a problem in cities. In my conversations with the likes of, Brussels or Dublin or Barcelona, they say, what I hear from them is that people who live in the city centre don't use their car that often. They use other modes of transport. Does that mean the cities are congestion free? No, because there is a lot of commuting traffic.
Yeah.
So even if local people aren't using their cars, we have a lot of commuting traffic. So we really need to target this market segment. So it's interesting to hear what Ronan's company is actually offering.
Absolutely. So that was my next question, because Aurélien didn't disagree with you a little bit. So I was saying they're all agreeing that's a problem now. Some disagreement is good also. Now, for a mass platform to be successful, public, private, transport stakeholders, all of them, they must collaborate. This is what all of you are saying, actually, and put the user at the heart of the experience. Now, we haven't spoken a lot about that. What about data management? Is it the key for, this to be successful? It's a question actually for all of you. Annelise, maybe, start.
Yeah, I think we all agree that we need everyone around the table to make a mass project work and be really adjusted to the local needs. Something we have not really touched base on up until now is the tariff and the price. We've talked about integration of the services on the ground to make it work, but we also need to have all the players around the table to work on tariff integration, which is really a key success factor as well. Because if you have a very nice digital platform, but you need to buy 10 different tickets along your trip.
Yeah, I
mean, it's not going to work. You're going to feel discouraged. So having one single pass for pretty much everything and all the services is key. But for that to happen, you need to have everyone nicely working together
around the table, not be rivals. This is what you mean, right? Okay, we got that message. Susan, you want to add something?
I support that. Of course, we need to bring all the different mobility providers around the table. Specifically regarding data, I mean, one thing that we've been advocating for at Polis and also with partner organisations UITP and EMTA is for this principle of data reciprocity, because we're very concerned that once, if mass really takes off, and if we see a mixture of different models of mass, public sector driven mass, third party commercial providers, other types of models, we're concerned that if in the future most transport tickets, especially public transport tickets, are sold through third party mass platforms, then public transport authorities and operators are going to lose a precious source of data about how people are using their network. They get a lot of the data through ticket validation and other, through ticket sales. So this is something we've been promoting, and we feel that there should be some sort of reciprocal relationship, and it shouldn't be based on a commercial agreement. But these are discussions that are happening at European level. There might be European regulation in the future on this.
I'm excited to see what happens next. Ronan?
Yeah, well, definitely data is at the center of all this, and this is crucial to scale up. So we need norms. We need to make sure that it's done correctly and in the interest of the users, for sure. I mean, if we want to create seamless journeys, if we want to offer a good experience, there has to be some norms to be created, and that cannot happen individually. So just to conclude on this, cooperation is absolutely essential to scale up mass.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. That would be the closing words. Thank you. It was great to have all your insights. Time to close this debate. Exciting discussion in many ways you've seen. The long version will be available on the Moving On Connect website, so don't miss the opportunity to learn more about this topic. And thank you to our lovely guests for their great insights and the visions of the future of mass in their different regions. Mobility key players who are initiating groundbreaking projects you will see for mobility and who are often part of the smart city movement. You will find them on the platform